What's up everybody, Nate here, and the housing market bubble in the United States looks like it's finally showing some signs of popping. Housing values all throughout the country have started to massively go down in price as inventory is now starting to pop up all throughout the United States. So inventory is coming up and housing values are slowly starting to decrease. This means that there's around 40 to 50 markets throughout the country that are about to lose around 50% of their value sometime very soon. Today, I kind of want to talk about why this is and why it is not the housing market crash that you are expecting. But if you haven't already, make sure to smash the thumbs up button below, hit that subscribe button too, and ring that notification bell as well. That way YouTube shows my videos to way more people around the world, and I keep making videos just like this one. So housing prices in the United States have been on a really wild ride over the last 6 to 8 months or so. At the end of 2021, housing prices were starting to set record highs all throughout the country, and most of that was due to inflation all throughout the United States. Back at the beginning of the pandemic in March of 2020, there was a lot of reasons for the housing market to suddenly explode. The US had interest rates near 0%, so buyers could go out and save hundreds of dollars on their mortgage payments every single month. Not only that, but the United States government was giving out thousands of dollars in stimulus. A lot of millennials and Gen Z and Gen X went out and bought their first home. They basically got checks from the government that were their first home buying starter kit. That was basically the start of this housing market bubble. So many people went out and bought homes that the prices started to get overinflated. The values got overinflated because homes really aren't worth that much more. Nothing really is being done to the homes, and there's an artificial amount of buyers being added to the market. Demand started to go up, but sellers simply didn't want to put their house on the market and then have to re-enter the market as a buyer. So inventory started to get depleted, and in 2022, we're now running into a situation where inventory is next to none, but demand is still staying pretty steadily high. So with that being said, why are values all throughout the country starting to come down in the double digits? Well, one of the reasons is because we're seeing a complete reversal from the Federal Reserve and the United States federal government from its policies. Interest rates were near 0% in 2020 and in 2021, but now in 2022, mortgage interest rates are starting to go way up, the highest they have been since about 2006. They are at around 7 to 8% on average right now for a 30-year fixed mortgage. That adds hundreds of additional dollars to your typical mortgage payment, and the crazy thing is, those houses didn't really do anything to gain all of that value or for you to have to pay a lot more on your mortgage. So you're simply paying a lot more because the market is in crazy demand and interest rates are going up. But I mentioned specifically that there are some markets in the US that could start to drop by around 50% or more. Now, the reason for that is because those markets are extremely overinflated. These are some of the most desirable areas in the country. Places like Florida and Arizona and parts of Washington State are about to drop 50% in value because over the last 2 years, they have gone up by 70 and almost 80% in value, which is double what the rest of the country saw in that exact same time. Typically, housing prices go up by around 1 to maybe 5% every single year. This is because there's usually a lot more demand in the housing market and demand for houses than there is inventory. Houses are the American dream, and there's a lot of houses out there that people want, and people continuously want to own homes. So there's a lot of demand, but inventory is always a lot slower because, well, people get those houses and then they want to stay in them for a long period of time. So prices go up by around 1 to 5%, but in 2020 and in 2021, prices went up between 15 and 30% on average across the country. The biggest question that realtors are asking right now is when this is all going to happen. When is there going to be absolutely no buyers in the housing market, meaning that inventory is all that's left and continues to go up, meaning housing prices come way down? When exactly is that going to happen? And honestly, there is not a clear answer. Basically, we need something called an equilibrium in the housing market in order to get prices back down. Supply and demand have to be pretty close to equal for all of those values to only steadily rise. Things are starting to steadily drop in the housing market because there's just all of these homes on the market that are way overinflated in value. pretty much every house on the market is worth a lot more than anybody is willing to pay for it, meaning that house is not that valuable and somebody isn't going to buy it for that, so the price has to come down. When we talk about those really big and populated markets though, like in Arizona and in Florida, a lot of people in those markets don't make a whole lot of money, or it's the opposite, they make a ton of money. So those properties are going to be priced accordingly, and if the people in those areas simply can't afford a house, but the housing market has gone crazy, well, then they're going to have to leave those areas, meaning there is nobody left to afford those houses, and the prices have to come down significantly. Like I said though, we don't have a particular time on when this is going to happen because the Federal Reserve is still in the process of raising its interest rates. In June of 2022, they raised their interest rates by 0.75%, more aggressively than they have since 1994, putting the federal funds rate at 1.5 to 1.75. And they're most likely going to continue to get aggressive with their interest rate policy and their stimulus as inflation gets worse in the United States. If that inflation number or the CPI number continues to go up past 8.6% into 9 and 10%, well, the Fed has no choice but to try to eliminate even more demand. That means mortgage interest rates could go up into the 9, 10, and 11% range by the end of 2022. What that does is price millions of Americans out of buying a home. So the housing market has no buyers left, so the prices will have to come down because houses are all that's left. Now, to be completely clear, housing prices in some areas are probably going to stay really hot for a really long time because those areas are desirable and people want to move to them. Some areas in the country have seen their housing values go up by around 70 to 80%. They might end up dropping by 50%, but they're still overinflated by 20 and 30%. That is still extremely high, and it's probably going to stay that way as it's a desirable area. Some spots in the country might not end up seeing a huge drop in home values because they're not as hot of an area. They may end up coming down by around 5 to 10%, or even possibly less. They could be completely flat because there's enough supply and demand already in the market. Mortgage rates throughout the country are going to vary, and the Federal Reserve raising interest rates and lowering demand is going to be a lot different and look a lot different throughout the United States. Redfin and Fannie Mae are predicting that this entire mortgage problem and home values could eventually level out sometime in 2023 or the early parts of 2024, meaning we're probably going to see a lot of these home values go up and down for a long time as supply and demand kind of gets reworked. But those markets I mentioned before are really key to the housing markets throughout the United States because they are going to signal how buyers are interacting with the market in 2022. If we start to see those markets cooling off really aggressively, coming down by 50% in value or more, then you can most likely expect other markets to be feeling the same problems. The high interest rates and the home values just don't match up, which means more inventory can come back on the market as well. And lastly, what you have to remember with these housing prices coming down is that this is not a housing market crash. Housing values are not going to go negative. So the value of what your home was or what a prospective home was in 2019 or the early parts of 2020, we're not going to see that in 2022 or in 2023. Housing values are not going to go negative. That would essentially mean a crash. But what we're going to see is a correction in the market. Prices coming down, percentages coming down, but not an outright crash where things completely flip. Everything in our economy right now is overinflated. The stock market has already gone through this, basically erasing all of the gains that it has seen over the last 2 years, but not really going into the negative. That is a complete reset. The same thing is happening in the cryptocurrency market and the commodities market. The housing market is a little bit slower because, like I said, houses are typically always in demand. So you're going to have that reset where these homes lose a lot of their value, but they're not going to lose almost all of it. They're not going to go into the negatives because they're still going to be demand for housing in the United States. This is all in an effort to bring those housing prices and values back to a normal level, a normal amount of growth and an equilibrium in the market, something the Federal Reserve is focusing on and something that is going to take a while and may end up leaving us with absolutely no home buyers in the market at all, something that every single day we are getting closer and closer to. But now I want to hear from you on this issue. What do you think about the housing market in 2022? Do you think that eventually we're going to have very little demand in the housing market and things are going to crash? Or do you think the housing market is simply going to level out, or the opposite is going to happen? The housing market is going to once again boom because there is just way too much demand right now. Whatever your thoughts are, leave a comment below before you go. But that is it for today's business and financial news breakdown. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to stay up to date with all of the top business and financial news from around the country, our team puts together a free daily newsletter, and you can subscribe to it by clicking the link in this corner right here. And if you want to stay up to date with me and everything else happening in the business and financial world, I'm putting out updates 7 days a week over here on this channel, and I've actually got another one ready for you right here, so be sure to check that out before you go. That is it for me, everybody. Be kind out there, and I'll see you all in the next one.